The virtual CISO moment is brought to you by vCISO Services, a leading provider of quality and experienced virtual chief information security officers for small and mid-sized businesses. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment and our first special Wednesday end-of-month episode. We've got a wonderful guest with us today, BJ Withrow. He joins us today. He is the manager of major accounts of the East Coast for Tenable, also the Beast of the East. BJ, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Greg. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you for asking me to participate.
So tell me a little bit about your journey, your career journey, and how you ended up coming into cyber.
Right out of high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to go to the University of Tennessee. But my family, no one had ever been to college before. And I knew that going straight out of high school, I was probably not the most mature young man and ready to tackle, the pitfalls of university life. And I couldn't afford it. And so my family had a strong background in military service. And so I chose the Navy. Spent 4 years there where I earned the GI Bill. I was stationed on the USS Enterprise, a large aircraft carrier. And then coming out of the Navy, I went to the University of Tennessee. I was there from 94 to 98.
Wow. So first of all, thank you for your service. And I totally understand. That's actually a good point to make, that sometimes when you leave high school and you're not really sure about what you want to do, taking a break or doing something else is a good thing. For me, I think you did the better thing. For me, I took a year off and I was a janitor at a hotel, and I learned I did not want to clean other people's vomit. So as a career. So I think I made a good choice, like pivoting. What did you do in the Navy?
So I was a radioman, and so
Uh-huh.
for people who aren't familiar, on the aircraft carrier, there's in the middle of the aircraft carrier, there's a communications shack. We call it the radio shack, and that's where all the crypto gear is, all the satellite communication gear. And our job primarily was to receive all the ship to ship communications, ship to shore, and then we would classify those, and then we would distribute those on a need to know basis, based on who they were to be routed to, and et cetera.
And then after that, you said you went to the University of Tennessee, and you were there from 94 to 98, you said?
That's right, the very best
Now there.
year, right? I mean,
Yeah.
championship year. Um, it's funny
That-
you mentioned you were a janitor right out of high school, and you knew that you didn't want to do that the rest of your life. But I enjoyed my time in the service, but there was some very hard times as well, and I knew that I could not be a full time military person. I have a lot of respect for our men and women who serve full time, but I knew that when I went to the University of Tennessee that I really wanted to apply myself because I wanted to be successful, and I did not want to go back into some of the hard labor and some of the hard work that I had to put in during my 4 years. And so I was very motivated to be a good student, much more so than when I was in high school. So I kind of
oh,
I kind of share that similar thought with
oh,
you.
oh, totally. And don't have time to get into it, but I was a challenge in high school. I'll just leave it at that. Uh,
There
so,
you go.
but you were actually at UT the same time that I was there in Knoxville, not as a student, but that was one of my early. I'm dating myself now, but that was one of my early career jobs. I was a network engineer for UT Med Center, which of course is right across the river down there, down Alcoa Highway and all that, and I got exposed to the whole idea of like SEC football in the South. Because
Mm.
I grew up in the North. I didn't know anything about football, and I didn't know anything about that. In fact, a buddy of mine, when I told him I was going to UT, he said, "Oh, you're going to be a paid volunteer," and I'm like, I didn't know what he was talking about. So it's like, but okay, so from UT, I don't want to spend all the time like going down memory lane there. Then tell me about where you went after that.
Sure, and I'll kind of condense this for your listeners. But so after University of Tennessee, I thought I was going to be a teacher, and as fate would have it, I did not go into teaching, and I ended up eventually working for Verizon. It was
Mhm.
WorldCom and MCI, then Verizon over the course of some events there. But I thought I was going to spend most of my career there at Verizon. I was there a little over 13 years, and I love technology. I'm not an engineer. I'm not deep in the technical weeds, but I love technology. I love solving business problems. And I was exposed to a lot at Verizon with their portfolio. And one of the things that I became very interested in was security. That was one of the offerings that we had at Verizon was pen testing, assessments, social engineering engagements, things like that. And every time I sat in on one of those discussions with a customer, I just kept seeing that this is going to be a huge existential threat to not just to us here in the States, but globally, and that this is not going away. And I really wanted to focus on a security specific role. And when an opportunity came up with Tenable, I explored it. I knew a little bit about Tenable. This is going back almost 8 years now. I've been with Tenable. But at the time, I'd never heard of Tenable, but I'd heard of Nessus. And our
Hmm.
practitioners were using Nessus to do network scans, quarterly scans, and things like that for our customers. And they raved about how great that tool was. And so when I started digging in and found out exactly who Tenable was and what their mission statement was and how they were helping organizations of all sizes, not just the large enterprises, but the small, medium sized businesses, I knew that's where I wanted to be. And since I've joined, I've absolutely loved being in the security space and working with the community.
Yeah, and so what the Beast of the East comment that was from a post that you had on LinkedIn recently. What was that? Was an award you won, right?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. We so Tenable has a really great culture with our customers, but also within inside the company. And one of our core values is, we celebrate success, and so they're very quick to recognize folks who are contributing, hardworking. And so our area vice president has an award where he will hand select each quarter one person who's done a great job, performance, et cetera, and then he'll award that to him, and it's called the Beast of the East. And so I kind of threw something out there on LinkedIn. If you ever look at any of my posts, and for your listeners, I just hope and pray that you don't take me too seriously. Um, I cannot stand social media posts that are soulless, without personality. Someone just copies and pastes a post. And so I try to interject some of my sarcasm, some of my humor, and my own opinion into it as well. It's not always right. It may not always be correct, but I put on there, I wish they had allowed me to rename it the Sexy Beast of the East Award, but that was totally denied. Totally denied.
Well, you never know unless you try. So, but you mentioned Nessus, and I always think way back in the day, Nessus originally was a free product that I actually grew up using Nessus. That was my first exposure to vulnerability assessments, and then I've used Tenable a lot. Um, and I know a lot of security practitioners use Tenable often, and businesses do. But just to clarify, is Tenable, is the company just about vulnerability management? Do you have other items in the portfolio?
Sure, that's a great question. So one of the things I love about Tenable is that, you kind of mentioned this with Nessus, at the core of our DNA, we really are about understanding vulnerabilities in an environment. And this isn't just for large organizations. This is for any company, regardless of sector or vertical or the size of the company, number of employees. If you go back to the old SANS, what is it, the top 10, top 20 model? Number one, if I remember correctly, is know everything that's on your network. Number
Hmm.
two is understand what vulnerabilities you have on those assets on your network, and number three is patch. I mean, those are the top three fundamentals of a good cyber hygiene program. And Tenable has never veered away from that.
Hmm.
We have evolved as new things, what we call modern assets, have come on the scenes. Things like web applications, public cloud, containers, OT environments, IoT. As those things have come onto the scene, Tenable has kept in lockstep with that. Um, I don't want to make this a big Tenable commercial, but just in the past 24 months, we've acquired 5 companies. Uh,
Really?
yeah, and so when we look at where we're at now and where we're going, Tenable is all about cyber exposure management. And when we're looking for vulnerabilities, it's not just on workstations and laptops. We're looking at things like Active Directory now, where we continuously monitor changes in Active Directory that lead to compromise. Because to Tenable, an Active Directory user is an asset, and a misconfiguration in identity is a vulnerability. And so now we can show you what's going on in identity. We can show you what's going on in public cloud. We purchased a company for attack surface management. So now for the first time, we can take what Nessus is showing you internally. Here's the vulnerabilities internally inside my organization. Now we can marry that up with an external view. These are all my public facing assets. And we can put those things together, and we can show a more holistic overview of what's going on across your whole organization, not just in one little siloed area or one little focus area, if you will.
Okay. Well, very good. So in that sense, I'm sure that you've been exposed to. You say that Tenable works with large companies, small companies, medium-sized companies. We on this podcast, we focus more in the small and mid-sized business space. Um, what, in your opinion, might be one of the top risks that information security risks that a small and mid-sized business has today?
Yeah, and these are my personal opinions. You guys can feel free to make them your own if you want. But I think the threat, regardless of size, is somewhat the same. And maybe I'll use an analogy on this, but in my home, we have it's me and my wife, and we have 5 children. And at any given time within our household, we probably have over 100 devices that are connected to our home network.
Wow.
And so, I'm playing IT manager because I'm responsible for the network. I'm playing security guy because I'm having to look for vulnerabilities in all these devices. I've got, laptops, I've got smartwatches, I've got, internet of hackable things. I mean, all that comes into play, and it's overwhelming for me in that small of an environment. When I look at organizations, small, medium businesses, the threat is so it's kind of the same, but it's a little different. What I see one of the biggest challenges is that most of these organizations don't have a dedicated team for security. They might have one person that's responsible for network, and maybe they do some things with firewall, but they don't have the time or maybe even the skill set to do some of the other quote unquote security things. And so, one of the things that I think one of the biggest threats is just assets in the environment that they're either aware of or not that have known vulnerabilities on them. That's one of the very first places where the bad people come in and look to do bad things within an organization. I would say unpatched systems, vulnerabilities in the environment, and then also maybe alert fatigue. Um, and that's kind of a common, maybe a buzzword across our whole industry, but folks have products that give them alerts, whether it's a firewall or other tools, and it seems like everything now is just kind of critical or high. And I kind of have a saying: if everything is critical and high, then nothing is. How do
Right.
I respond? So those are probably the
Right.
two biggest issues. Show me where my risk is, and then show me how to prioritize, because I just don't have a lot of people or time.
Well, that's one of the things that we see in the virtual CISO space, where when we start with a new client, one of the first things that we try to understand is, what is your inventory? What is your inventory of your information? What is your inventory of your networked assets? As you said, 100. And as a side note, when you said that you have like 100 connected in your house, my first impression was like, no, there's no way. But I think about it's I just live with my wife, and at any given time we probably have like there's probably like between 25 and 30 things that are on the net because you have so many things. You have like thermostats and this and that and cameras. I mean, each one, we've got a couple of cameras. Each one of them are on the net and in various configurations. But you can't. One of the standing rules of information security is that you can't protect what you don't know about. I
Mm.
mean, let alone like how can you patch something or how can you do a vulnerability scan if you don't know about it as well? And so I think that anything that helps with understanding the inventory of things that are out there is certainly important. And I'm assuming that again, not to make it a Tenable commercial, but that does help with discovery as well too. I'm sure.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. We do a good job of helping customers discover assets that they may not be aware of. One of the biggest challenges, and just a great example, when Log4j came out and kind of took the world by storm, we had customers. I specifically work with just large accounts, and they were telling us things like, "We have an Azure cloud environment, but we have no idea what's in there."
yeah.
And so Tenable has connectors into these various cloud environments. And within a matter of seconds, for the very first time, they were able to see a full inventory of everything related to their account number. And it was like 14,000 things that they didn't know about. Um,
Yeah, and that's what one of the things that makes it so difficult for us then to come behind and do what we do as far as holistically creating and a risk-based information security program. It's like if the client can't tell us what they have, and then we always try to take it a step further because then I want to know a data flow diagram. Okay, here's all the things you have. Here's all the different data you have. Now, how does it all connect together? So I would definitely agree. And as that being a threat out there, as well as the alert fatigue, because that's huge because we have so many devices out there now that are monitoring so many different things and just you cannot prioritize kind of parroting what you said. You can't prioritize something if everything is a priority.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. And we're doing some things that are pretty unique. I say pretty unique. I'm very biased because I work at Tenable and I bleed Tenable teal. But within Tenable, while we're still focused on vulnerabilities and understanding vulnerabilities, we have a data science team, and this is kind of like the hidden crown jewel within Tenable that most people don't even know exists. We've got over 100 data scientists that work specifically to create the detections for those vulnerabilities that we're talking about, but they do other things too. So last year, Tenable and the data science team found and responsibly disclosed over 130 zero days.
thank you.
Things like with Zoom and Slack, and even
Hmm.
FiOS routers with Verizon. I mean, just as an example, these are all things that we worked with those organizations on privately. We waited, helped them develop patches, and then once everything was taken care of and the customers were notified, then we could disclose those. But in addition to that, they've done some things within the data feed. So, like for example, when we scan for vulnerabilities, we don't just say this is a critical or high. Our data science team has created this algorithm, and that takes in about 150 data points, and we give you an additional score that tells you these are the vulnerabilities most likely to be acted upon the next 27 business days. And it's based on things like threat feed intelligence.
Hmm.
Is there an active exploit kit available? There's a lot that goes into that. I won't bore your listeners with all the details, but we're really trying to help our customers understand what they have and then help them prioritize on it.
Yeah, and I said thank you at the beginning of that because it's like it's so important to have like that industry research to look at, identify 0 days, and then go through and help with mitigation strategies and actions before it actually becomes public. I think that if we didn't have that sort of ecosystem built on the backside of everything information security, it would be a lot worse than it is out there now. So again, thank you for you guys doing that. Um, but all of this, everything in cyber and making sure that we try to protect everything the way that we should, it gets to be a little bit stressful. So I know you can't live everything and anything cyber 24/7. What's one of the things you do to decompress?
Yeah, that is something that I've thought a lot about. I actually published an article. I think it was titled "The Importance of Adding a Ukulele to Your Security Practice." And I was it was kind of tongue in cheek, but I've had the privilege and the pleasure of working in the security community now for almost 8 years exclusively, and then prior to that, technology for 20 years. And one thing I've seen is this trend, like you mentioned, like our buddies, the guys and gals in the trenches, responding to these alerts, trying to protect organizations day in and day out. They work really, really hard, and the stress level is incredibly high. A lot of times
Mm-hmm.
they're underpaid and they're underfunded, but they're still expected, to protect the organization. Nobody wants to be in the newspaper, and so I think it's really important for myself and for our community that we have good, healthy outlets to relieve stress. I've seen that play out in a lot of different ways. Some people work hard and they play really hard. And that can be in the form of all kinds of things, whether it's a bourbon collection or a cigar affinity, and both of those are fantastic. But the way I try to wind down is through physical activity. I love to trail run. I'm here right outside the Great Smoky Mountains. I live in Knoxville, so we've got the urban wilderness in downtown Knoxville. So I'm doing trail runs. I'm doing mountain biking, road cycling. Go up to the mountains every chance I get. And full disclosure, I'm a man of faith too, and I think that plays into it. I love security, but what we're talking about right now is very temporary security. I think
Amen.
there is a more philosophical discussion, maybe for a different podcast, where there's like this eternal security that can be reached that's impossible to achieve, through a firewall or through a sim.
And I'm very open about my faith as well, too. I have spoken several times on the podcast about the why I do what I do. And basically, this has just been a God nudge for me. I know you and I have talked about this beforehand as well, too. But just to sort of summarize it, I got a little bit of a tap on the shoulder that basically told me, "Hey, you're doing a good job in the security field." I could have retired as CISO at my prior bank job where I was working there full time, but God was nudging me to say you can do better with your talents, and small and mid-sized businesses need something more like that. So, yes, that is ultimately the ultimate security, if you will. I like the way you put that, and um, it lends me to. I say this a lot that sometimes people ask me, "Well, you seem to be pretty successful, Greg, in information security and cyber consulting and all that. What's your secret sauce?" I said, "Really, it's very simple. If you have a heart of a servant, you will always be successful." So you're right. Maybe we'll have to do a special episode on that sometime because it would I could talk on that forever. So
Well, I
um
I
so
just wonder. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wonder. Within our community, we deal with some incredibly, I would say, brilliant, if not genius, people. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to be in security, but there are some incredibly sharp and very smart people. There's also some very cynical people because of their intelligence and their experience and some of the good things and the bad things that they've experienced, just in dealing with human nature and what they see in security. And I wonder if, like, folks like myself and you who are trying to serve and solve problems, if more of us had that servant heart to where we really are trying to help them instead of push a product or go through some kind of marketing framework. I wonder. I think that there is something about being successful there, loving God and loving people. And part of loving people is serving them and not really always having, me as the focus. And so that's always been my mindset is, try to help other people. The rest of it will follow if it's meant to be. Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, I mean, we are called to be the salt and the light, and I think that sometimes the best way we can do that is through example and how we live. And then sometimes you'll have someone, or how we run our careers, and someone will come up to you and say, like they did with me, well, how did you get to that level of success? Well, thank you for the opening. Let me tell you. and
Exactly.
and then it goes on. So, future plans for you?
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I am a deep roots loyal guy. And I believe that the only way to be successful in life is, whether it's in a relationship, a marriage, a friendship, a career, is that you get to some place that you believe in, and then you plant deep roots. And so, personally, I've never had aspirations of like climbing some corporate ladder or going from one company to another company just to further my career. That's never been my goal. My goal, honestly, is to do a good job with what I've been given. That's why it's funny, when I interviewed with Tenable almost 8 years ago. One of the marks against me, and the people that interviewed me, they're no longer there. But the mindset is this is a software company and a security company, and we move fast. And you've been at Verizon now almost 14 years. That could almost speak to loyalty, or it could be complacency, like you were very comfortable.
Hmm.
And I had to kind of defend that, because that's kind of a rarity in our industry right now. I see
It is.
if you go on LinkedIn right now, it's the beginning of the year, and there's so many people announcing that they started a new job and they're going to a new position. And it's like, wait a minute, last year you were at the best company on the planet, and you were there for 4 months, and now and I'm not knocking that at all. I mean, but I'm built differently that way. So my career objectives are, I want to be a good steward of what I've been given. I'm very blessed to be here in Knoxville to work for Tenable. And the way they allow me to work is almost like I'm running my own franchise, very much like you're running your own business, Craig. Um, they've given me, a great pay, great health benefits, and then I get to work with some of the biggest named accounts on the planet, these global multinational corporations. And it's fascinating. So I wake up every day and I'm excited to see what the day is going to hold. And so I just, I mean, this may sound naive, but I hope that I'm able to do what I'm doing for a long time. I don't want to go anywhere. I want to continue to help the customers that I've been given, and I want to do a good job. And I still want to work and participate in the security community. Um, if opportunities arise and they come my way, of course I'll look at them and pray about them. But as far as career objectives, I'm in the dream job that I thought I'd never have.
Well, you're a great influencer on LinkedIn, and you're in one of the most beautiful spots in the nation. I believe Knoxville, that whole area is just, having lived there 3 years myself. It's just a wonderful place to be. So, BJ, I so much appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Again, like I said beforehand, we could talk on a lot of things for a much longer time. Maybe we'll do a follow up episode, but thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely, Greg. Love you. Love what you're doing in the space. Thank you for supporting our brethren and our sisters in the small medium business community. A much underserved market. Your expertise is greatly needed there, and I'm sure for the people that you interact with is greatly appreciated. Thank you for inviting me to participate. I went through and looked at a lot of your episodes. You've had some great people on here, and I don't feel worthy to be part of this, but I but I appreciate you inviting me on, and I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Oh, me too. And thank you so much for the kind words. And everybody, stay secure.